Ambassador Jinwoo Park walked slowly toward the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His black leather shoes clicked against the smooth metal floor with each step. Behind him, 47 different alien species watched in silence. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and a few looked like walking rocks. But they all had the same expression: they thought humans were making a big mistake. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds could form up there. Colorful lights from different worlds created a rainbow effect on the walls. Jinwoo had been coming to this place for 10 years, always hoping things would get better for humanity. Today was different. Today was the last day. Captain Sumin Lee followed 3 steps behind him, just like military rules said she should. Her blue uniform was perfect, every button shining. But her hands were shaking with anger. She remembered the battle at Kepler Station, where she lost so many good people defending alien colonies. The council gave all the thanks and money to the aliens afterward. Humans got nothing but a small mention in the official reports. Ambassador Park, called a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. Jinwoo stopped walking but did not turn around. He knew that voice belonged to Chancellor Vorthage, a being that looked like a mountain with arms and legs. You cannot be serious about this withdrawal. Your people need our guidance. Jinwoo finally turned around. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard as diamonds. Chancellor, we needed your respect. We never got it. So now we leave. The chamber erupted with sounds that hurt human ears. The Elthurians made clicking noises like angry insects. The gas creatures swirled in angry purple clouds. The rock people made rumbling sounds like small earthquakes. They were all laughing at the humans. Look at them, whispered Prime Delegate Krexenel to his assistant. His bug-like face twisted into what might have been a smile. They think they can survive without us. Their little ships will break down in space. Their colonies will starve. They will come crawling back within 1 year, begging us to forgive them. But Jinwoo was not listening to their laughter anymore. He was remembering something from 3 months ago. A secret meeting in the dark space between stars. Ships from dozens of worlds that the Council had ignored or rejected. Creatures the Council called too primitive or too dangerous to join their group. Those creatures had asked humans a simple question: why do you stay with people who treat you badly? Jinwoo had not been able to give a good answer then. Now he could. Captain Sumin Lee stepped forward and handed Jinwoo a small metal case. Inside was a data crystal that contained humanity's goodbye message. Jinwoo walked back to the speaking platform and placed the crystal into the reader. Immediately, every screen in the chamber lit up with the same words in every known language. The message was short but clear. Humanity was leaving. All human soldiers, workers, and ships would be gone from Council space in 6 months. No exceptions. No negotiations. The decision was final. This is madness, roared Chancellor Vorthake, his rocky fists pounding the floor. You are children playing with adult decisions. The void predators will eat your worlds while you sleep. Jinwoo looked up at the massive alien. For 300 years, humans had fought those void predators. Human ships patrolled the dangerous outer regions where no other species wanted to go. Human soldiers died on airless moons protecting alien trade routes. And what did humanity get? A seat at the back of the chamber and permission to speak for 5 minutes every month. You speak of void predators, Chancellor, Jinwoo said quietly. Tell me, when did your people last face them in battle? The rocky being's face darkened. Everyone in the chamber knew the answer. The Titan Confederacy had not sent ships to the Outer Rim in over 50 years. That was human work. Dangerous work. Work that nobody else wanted to do. We provide the technology and guidance, Vorthake rumbled. You provide the muscles. The muscles are leaving, Jinwoo replied. He picked up his case and walked toward the exit again. Find new muscles. Prime Delegate Krexenel scuttled after him on his 6 legs. Ambassador, surely we can discuss this. Perhaps humanity deserves a slightly larger voice in our decisions. Perhaps we could increase your resource allocations by 5%. Jinwoo stopped walking. For just a moment, Sumin Lee thought he might change his mind. 5% more resources would help a lot of human colonies. It would save lives. But then Jinwoo looked around the chamber one more time. He saw the condescending faces, the dismissive gestures, the barely hidden contempt. These beings had never seen humans as equals. They saw humans as useful tools, nothing more. Delegate Krexenel, Jinwoo said softly, some prices are too high to pay. The massive doors began to slide open with a deep groaning sound. Beyond them lay the docking bay where the human ships waited. Ships that would soon carry humanity away from this place forever. You will be back, Crexenel called after them. When your people are dying and your worlds are burning, you will remember why you needed us. Jinwoo paused at the threshold and looked back one final time. Perhaps. But when next we meet, it will be as equals or not at all. The doors sealed shut with a sound like thunder. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent. 47 species sat in their seats, suddenly wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. Outside, humanity's ships began their engines and prepared to leave forever. Trade Minister Kyung-ho Nam sat in his office high above the council's capital city. Through his window he could see the busy streets filled with aliens from dozens of worlds. But the numbers on his computer screen told a different story. The galaxy was slowly falling apart. Lieutenant Choi, he called to his assistant, a young woman who had worked with humans before they left. Come look at these reports. Jihai Choi walked over to his desk, her face already showing worry. She had been expecting bad news for weeks. How bad is it, sir? Worse than we thought. Kyung-ho pointed at the glowing numbers on his screen. The Kepler Nebula used to produce 30% of our rare metals. Now it produces nothing. The entire operation is shut down. Jihai sat down heavily in the chair across from his desk. All the human mining crews left, didn't they? Every single one. And nobody else wants to work there. The radiation levels would kill most species within days. Only humans were crazy enough to work in those conditions. Kyung-ho rubbed his tired eyes. They made it look so easy. The Kepler Nebula was not the only problem. Across the galaxy, dangerous jobs that humans had done for centuries were now empty. Deep space mining in radioactive fields. Cargo runs through pirate-infested systems. Maintenance work on unstable space stations. Other species had always been happy to let humans handle the risky work while they took the profits. Now the work was not getting done at all. Lieutenant Choi pulled up more data on her tablet. Sir, the shipping lanes are even worse. The outer rim routes that connect the mining worlds to the core systems, 60% of the traffic is gone. Because humans were the ones brave enough to fly those routes, Kyung-ho said bitterly. Pirates, void storms, gravity wells that could crush a ship, humans flew through all of that like it was a pleasant vacation. Meanwhile, in the military headquarters on the other side of the city, General Tae-young Kim sat in a small office labeled Military Advisor. 6 months ago, he had commanded the Council's entire strategic defense network. Now he was lucky if anyone asked his opinion about lunch. The irony was not lost on him. The Council had demoted him because he was human, but they still needed human knowledge to make their military work. Unfortunately, most of that knowledge had walked out the door with the rest of humanity. General Kim watched the live feed from the Vortex system on his screen. Pirates were attacking the mining world of Kethrim, and the Council fleet was responding exactly the way their textbooks said they should. Perfect formations. Coordinated firepower. Strategic retreats when things got difficult. It was a disaster in slow motion. They are doing everything right, Kim muttered to himself. And that is exactly why they are losing. His assistant, Colonel Minho Park, looked up from his own computer. Sir, shouldn't their tactics work? They have better ships and more firepower than the pirates. Minho, let me tell you something about fighting pirates. General Kim leaned back in his chair. Pirates do not read textbooks. They do not follow rules. They attack when you expect them to retreat. They retreat when you expect them to attack. Our people knew how to fight like pirates when they needed to. On the screen, they watched as the Council's beautiful battle formation began to fall apart. The pirates were not fighting fair. They were using suicide runs, fake retreats, and attacks from impossible angles. The Council fleet, trained to fight honorable battles against other organized fleets, had no idea how to respond. The Human Strike Corps would have ended this fight in 20 minutes, General Kim said sadly. One crazy attack run straight through the enemy formation, and the pirates would have scattered like leaves in a storm. Colonel Park nodded. I remember Captain Sumin Lee's attack at Sigma Base. She flew her ship straight into the enemy flagship's docking bay and fought her way to the bridge on foot. The Council called that reckless and unprofessional, General Kim remembered. They never understood that sometimes reckless is the only thing that works. The battle at Kethrim ended 3 hours later. 4 Council cruisers were destroyed or heavily damaged. The mining facility was in ruins. The pirates had escaped with enough stolen equipment to outfit a small fleet. Back in his office, Trade Minister Nam was getting reports from across the galaxy. Similar attacks were happening everywhere. Pirates who had stayed hidden while humans patrolled the space lanes were now coming out in force. They know we cannot replace the Human Strike Corps, Lieutenant Choi said, reading the latest security briefings. Every pirate gang in the galaxy is taking advantage. Kyung-ho stood up and walked to his window. The city below still looked prosperous and peaceful. But he knew that prosperity depended on trade routes that were no longer safe and mining operations that were no longer running. Lieutenant, send a message to the council leadership. Request an emergency session. What should the message say, sir? Kyung-ho was quiet for a long moment. Outside his window, alien ships were still arriving and departing from the spaceport. But there were fewer of them each day. Tell them that we need to discuss the human situation. Tell them that our economy is collapsing. He turned away from the window. And tell them that we might have made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 3 systems away in human space, Ambassador Jin-Woo Park was reading similar reports about the Council's problems. But he was also reading much more interesting reports about humanity's new allies and their growing success. The silence was spreading through Council space. But in human space, something entirely different was beginning. Dr. Sung-Hwan Lee stood in his laboratory on New Terra Station, watching the emergency broadcast from Council space. The screens showed terrible images of destroyed ships and burning space stations. But Lee was not surprised. He had been expecting this day for 20 years. Director Kim, he called to his boss who was pacing nervously near the window. You need to see this. Director Hyejin Kim had once worked as a liaison between humans and the Council. She thought she knew all of humanity's secrets. But as she looked at Dr. Lee's computer screens, she realized she had been wrong. What am I looking at? She asked, staring at the complex diagrams and star maps. The truth, Dr. Lee said quietly. For 300 years, humanity has been fighting a secret war. The Council never knew about it because we never told them. The screens showed the positions of human patrol ships over the past century. To most people it looked like random patrol routes. But Dr. Lee's trained eye could see the pattern. The human ships had been arranged in a careful grid around the outer edge of known space. We were not just patrolling for pirates, Dr. Lee explained. We were keeping something much worse contained. Director Kim sat down slowly. The Devourers. Ancient machine intelligences. They appeared about 400 years ago and started consuming entire star systems. The Council's first attempts to fight them were disasters. Traditional military tactics only made the machines stronger. Dr. Lee pulled up historical records that few people had ever seen. Images of the early Devourer attacks showed massive mechanical entities that looked like metal spiders the size of moons. They moved through space consuming everything: ships, stations, entire planets, and growing larger with each meal. The machines learn, Dr. Lee continued. Every time you fight them with standard tactics, they analyze your strategies and become better at countering them. Formation attacks, concentrated firepower, strategic retreats, they understand all of that and turn it against you. So how did we stop them? We did not stop them. We confused them. Dr. Lee smiled grimly. Humans have one advantage over every other species in the galaxy. We are completely unpredictable. On his main screen, Dr. Lee showed Director Kim the current situation at the edge of Council space. The first Devourer scouts had appeared 3 weeks ago, just small machines about the size of fighter ships. The Council had responded with their standard fleet formations. It had been a massacre. Watch this, Dr. Lee said, pointing to the tactical display. The Council fleet approaches in perfect battle formation. Disciplined, organized, exactly what their military academies teach. Director Kim watched as the sleek Council ships moved in precise patterns toward the dark mechanical enemies. The Devourers seemed small compared to the massive alien cruisers. The Devourers scanned the Council formation and analyzed their tactics in real time, Dr. Lee narrated. Formation speed, weapon placement, communication patterns, they learn it all in minutes. What happened next was horrible to watch. The Devourer scouts suddenly changed their behavior. They moved in perfect counter formations, targeting exactly the right ships at exactly the right moments. Within an hour, the entire Council fleet was destroyed. They turned the Council's own tactics against them, Director Kim whispered. Exactly. But watch what happens when humans fight them. Dr. Lee switched to an older recording from the human archives. It showed a single human ship facing 3 Devourer scouts near the Vega system. Director Kim expected to see another massacre, but something different happened. The human ship, commanded by Captain Dong-hyun Park, did something completely insane. Instead of maintaining a safe distance and using long-range weapons, he flew straight at the largest Devourer. At the last second he spun his ship around and fired all weapons backward while flying away upside down. That makes no sense, Director Kim said. Exactly. The Devourers could not process it. Look at their response. The mechanical enemies seemed to freeze in space for several seconds, unable to decide how to react to such an illogical attack. In that moment of confusion, Captain Park's ship escaped. Humans have been doing this for centuries, Dr. Lee explained. Kamikaze runs when retreat would be logical. Solo attacks when group tactics would be better. Weapons fired at empty space just to waste ammunition. The machines cannot learn from chaos because chaos has no pattern to learn. Director Kim was beginning to understand the terrible truth. So humanity was protecting the galaxy all this time, and the Council never knew. We tried to tell them once about 100 years ago. They laughed at us. Said our tactics were primitive and reckless. They ordered us to stop using unprofessional combat methods and follow standard military doctrine. What did we do? We smiled, agreed with them, and kept fighting the secret war. Dr. Lee's expression was sad. Every human patrol ship in the Outer Rim was actually part of a containment network. We kept the Devourers confused and contained in the deep void where they could not threaten inhabited systems. On the current broadcast, they could see more Council fleets being destroyed. Each defeat only made the Devourers smarter and more dangerous. Without the constant confusion of human tactics, the ancient machines were beginning to expand their territory for the first time in 3 centuries. How long before they reached the core worlds? Director Kim asked. Dr. Lee ran some calculations on his computer. At their current expansion rate? 6 months. Maybe less. Director Kim stared at the screens showing the Council's desperate situation. Are we going to help them? Dr. Lee was quiet for a long moment. Then he showed her one more screen, a communication from the Council requesting immediate human assistance. That decision, he said, is not up to us anymore. Ambassador Sunja Park stood at the viewing window of New Seoul Station, watching alien ships arrive one after another. These were not the proud Council vessels she remembered from her diplomatic days. These ships looked damaged, desperate, and afraid. Another delegation just requested docking permission, Lieutenant Woojin Kim reported, checking his security tablet. That makes 5 this week. They are all asking for emergency meetings. Sunja did not turn away from the window. Below in the docking bay she could see the Althurian ship called Humility's Price. Even the name was different from the old days when Council ships had names like Galactic Supremacy and Eternal Dominion. What do they want to discuss? Sunja asked, though she already knew the answer. The same thing they all want to discuss. The Devourer threat. They want humanity to come back and help them fight. Sunja finally turned around. Lieutenant Kim had been her security chief for 8 years, back when she worked as a Council liaison. He had seen how the aliens treated humans, like useful servants who should be grateful for the privilege of serving. And what is our official response? The same response we gave the others, Lieutenant Kim said firmly. Humanity has moved on. We have new allies and new priorities. The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss, and the Althurian delegation walked out. Sunja could see them through the security monitors. The lead delegate was young, probably in his first diplomatic assignment. Most of the older, more experienced Council diplomats were dead, killed when the Devourers destroyed their ships. Delegate Prexhal to see Ambassador Park. Came the announcement over the station's communication system. Sunja walked to her office, a simple room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a view of the stars. It was nothing like the Grand Council chambers where meetings used to be held. But those chambers were probably space debris now. Prexhal entered the room walking carefully, as if he was afraid of making a wrong move. His insect-like face was harder to read than a human face, but Sunja could sense his nervousness. This was probably the most important meeting of his short career. Honored Ambassador Park, Prexhal began, his translator making his clicking sounds into words. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I see all diplomatic visitors, Sunja replied, gesturing for him to sit down. It is basic courtesy. Yes, courtesy. Prexhal seemed to think about that word for a moment. The Council has asked me to discuss certain changes in our relationship with humanity. Sunja said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence often made people say more than questions did. We acknowledge that perhaps humanity deserved better treatment during your time with the Council, Prexhal continued. We may have made some errors in judgment. Errors in judgment. Sunja repeated his words slowly. Is that what you call 300 years of treating humans like servants? The young Althurian's antennae twitched with embarrassment. Ambassador, the current crisis affects all intelligent life. Surely old disagreements can be set aside for the greater good. What greater good? Sunja asked. The greater good of the species who laughed when humanity left? The greater good of the council who said we would come crawling back within a year. Prexhal opened his diplomatic case and pulled out a data pad. The council is prepared to offer humanity full membership with expanded territorial rights. Your people would receive preferential trade status and increased resource allocations. Sunja looked at the formal offer displayed on the data pad. 6 months ago, such an offer would have been everything humanity had wanted. Now it seems small and meaningless. 5% increase in territorial allocation, she read aloud. 7% increase in trade privileges. A seat on the secondary council with limited voting rights. It is a generous offer, Prexhal said hopefully. It is an insult. Sunja pushed the data pad back across the desk. You offer us scraps from your table when your civilization is collapsing. Through her office window, Sunja could see human ships moving through the space around New Sol Station. But these were not the small patrol vessels that used to serve the council. These were massive ships built with technology from dozens of different species, allies that humanity had found after leaving the council. Perhaps you would like to see what humanity has accomplished without the council's help, Sunja said, activating her office display screen. The holographic map that appeared showed human space as it existed now. What had once been a small cluster of worlds given to humanity by the council had grown into a vast network spanning multiple star systems. More importantly, it showed the orbital signatures of dozens of species that the council had either ignored or rejected. The Kethari mineral collectives, Sunja explained, highlighting several systems. You called them barely intelligent rock creatures. They have developed mining techniques that make your best operations look primitive. She highlighted another region. The Void Dancers. You said they were too alien for meaningful contact. They have been teaching our pilots to navigate hyperspace currents that your best navigators never knew existed. Prexhal stared at the display in shock. This is impossible. These species lacked the technology for such development. They lacked access to partners who treated them as equals, Sunja corrected. We did not just leave your table, delegate. We built a better one. The map continued to reveal humanity's new confederation. Silicon-based builders who could construct space stations in days rather than years. Energy form wanderers who could repair damaged ships by simply touching them. Hive mind shapers who could grow new technologies like plants in a garden. We have a counteroffer for the council, Sunja said, closing the display. What are your terms? Complete restructuring of galactic government with humanity as the senior partner. Equal representation for all of our allies. Shared military command. And full acknowledgement that the council's age of dominance is over. Prexhal's antennae drooped with despair. The council would never accept such terms. Sunja stood up and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the council ships waiting in the docking bay like beggars asking for charity. Then the council can face the devourers alone, she said quietly. You have 7 days to decide. Supreme Coordinator Elena Vasquez stood at the head of the conference table aboard the human flagship New Horizon. Around her sat the representatives of what used to be the mighty Galactic Council. Now there were only 23 species left, and most of them looked tired and defeated. Elena remembered when she was just Ambassador Jean Woo Park's assistant, taking notes while alien delegates laughed at human proposals. Now those same aliens waited quietly for her to speak, hoping she would save their civilizations from complete destruction. The Galactic Assembly Accords are now official, Elena announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. All member species have equal rights and equal voices in our new government. The signing ceremony was nothing like the grand displays the old council used to love. There were no golden thrones or crystal podiums. Instead, representatives sat around a simple circular table where everyone could see everyone else. The most powerful being in the room was a human woman who had once served coffee to alien diplomats. Admiral Dong Min Park activated the wall displays, showing the current military situation. The maps looked much better than they had 3 months ago when the council first came begging for help. The Devourer advance has been stopped, Admiral Park reported. In fact, we have pushed them back to their original containment zone. Delegate Prexhal, who had aged 10 years in the past few months, leaned forward in his seat. How did you do it? Our best fleets could not even slow them down. We fought them the way humans have always fought them, Admiral Park explained. With complete chaos. The tactical displays showed recent battle footage that would have given old council military instructors nightmares. Human ships flying in impossible formations, attacking when retreat made sense, retreating when victory was certain. Mixed crews of humans and former council species working together in ways that broke every rule of military science. Captain So-Young Kim appeared on one of the screens, broadcasting from her command ship near the front lines. Behind her, the bridge was a controlled mess of activity as crew members from 6 different species worked side by side. "The key is staying unpredictable," Captain Kim explained to the assembly. "The moment the Devourers think they understand our tactics, we change everything. Yesterday we won a battle by having our entire fleet play dead for 3 hours. That should not work," muttered Chancellor Vorthake, one of the few council leaders who had survived the initial Devourer attacks. "It should not work," Captain Kim agreed cheerfully. "That is exactly why it does work." Elena watched the faces around the table as they tried to understand humanity's approach to warfare. These beings had spent centuries believing that military success came from discipline, organization, and following established rules. The idea that chaos could be more effective than order challenged everything they thought they knew. "The Devourers are machines," Admiral Park continued. "They analyze patterns and create counters to those patterns. But you cannot counter something that has no pattern to begin with." Dr. Young-Soo Park, head of the Assembly's Integration Committee, stood up to present his report. 6 months ago, he had been just another human scientist that the Council barely acknowledged. Now he was coordinating technology sharing between dozens of species. "Our integration program has exceeded all expectations," Dr. Park announced. "The Kethari mineral extraction techniques, combined with Void Dancer navigation skills and human engineering, have created mining operations 3 times more efficient than anything the old council achieved." The holographic displays showed the Assembly's growing industrial capacity. Former enemies were now working together, sharing knowledge and resources in ways the hierarchical council had never allowed. "The builders have completed 14 new space stations in the past month," Dr. Park continued. "The Wanderers have established energy relay networks that connect systems thousands of light-years apart. And the Shapers have grown us completely new types of ships that can repair themselves during battle." Elena smiled as she watched the alien delegates struggle to understand how much the galaxy had changed. The old council had been based on the idea that some species were naturally superior to others. The assembly was based on the radical concept that everyone had something valuable to contribute. "But what about the Devourers that are still out there?" asked a nervous representative from the Nathaki gas clouds. "Surely they will adapt to our chaotic tactics eventually." "They will try," Elena admitted. "But we have something they cannot adapt to: imagination." She activated a new display showing the Assembly's long-term plans. Instead of just containing the Devourers, they were going to reprogram them. The ancient machines would be turned into guardians, their adaptive intelligence redirected toward protection rather than destruction. "Former enemies becoming allies," Elena said, looking directly at Chancellor Vorthake. "It seems to be a theme with us." The Rocky being actually managed something that might have been a smile. "Perhaps humans were not as primitive as we thought." "We were never primitive," Elena replied gently. "We were just different. And difference, it turns out, is exactly what the galaxy needed." The ceremony concluded with the activation of the Assembly's new communication network. For the first time in galactic history, every member species from the most advanced to the most basic had equal access to information and equal say in decisions. 6 months later, Elena stood in her office aboard New Sol Station, reading reports from across the galaxy. Former council worlds were prospering under Assembly guidance. New species were joining every week. The Devourers had been completely reprogrammed and now served as the galaxy's most effective defense force. Most importantly, the conference rooms of the Assembly had no special seats for important species. Everyone sat at the same level, everyone had the same voice, and everyone was treated with equal respect. Humanity had not just left the Council's table. They had built a better table where everyone belonged.